So, if you've seen my first video, you'll already know why I might not be on the best terms with Alcremie right now. But for those who don't want to sit through an hour-long video,
Alcremie was the next Pokemon that had me jump through extra hoops since I needed a sweet from the Battle Cafe in order to evolve Milcery. Time was short for these types of things to start happening, and I was starting to stress a little bit. Or I just didn't know what to do since I hadn't slept for almost 24 hours at this point.
So now you're all caught up with that, and the fact that you've seen the title and thumbnail. We're going to try and fix this relationship by collecting all 63 forms of Alcremie. The thing driving me to do this now is similar to why I started my living decks, and that's the trailers for Scarlet and Violet. But this time, it was the trailers for the DLC. That's because I spotted a Pokemon at the end of the DLC trailer that looks a little familiar. After I noticed it, I did what any rational person would do, and decided that I'd collect every form of Alcremie as soon as possible, just in case they decided to make it easier in Scarlet and Violet. Because, as you might know, I kinda hate myself. To do this, we're gonna need two things: Milcery and some sweets. Although technically, I'm gonna need 9 of each type of sweet and 63 Milcery to be able to evolve them into every available form. So that's more like 126 things really. Now most of these can be collected in the base game of Sword and Shield, but because I missed the timed event, I'm going to have to get comfy in the Isle of Armor to collect everything I'm going to need to finish this part of my form decks. From that, you've probably already guessed that we're going to need to visit the man-made Pokemon that calls the dojo its home, the Cram-O-Matic. Which also means we're going to need to remember a couple recipes as we go, if only that was true. We have 2 options to get the 5 normal sweets, those being the strawberry, love, berry, clover and flower. The first of these we've used before. You can visit the cafes in each of the main cities once per day to battle the cafe masters. And yes, that is the name. To have a chance to get a single sweet, that is if you don't value your time and you aren't using a date skip method. But even with the date skip trick, this is still actually the slower method. And if you couldn't tell at this point, the whole challenge is basically a task of making every step of the process as efficient as possible. To make the normal sweets, I'm going to need a Misty Seed and 3 wishing pieces for each one. We'll worry about the Misty Seeds later, because it's wishing pieces that are going to be the pain point of this recipe, and by proxy, all the other recipes we'll need to use as well. Wishing pieces can be found randomly on the ground, but this is the most sadistic way to try and get them, and I don't quite hate myself that much quite yet. The other way is slightly more efficient, but they do require a fair bit of legwork to collect enough wishing pieces to finish a challenge. We can buy wishing pieces from the Watt traders for 3,000 watts each, but we support small family owned businesses on this channel, so this means we're going to be visiting our other friends, the Digging Duo, also known as the Digging Bros. If we talk to the lazier of the 2 brothers, he has a 3% chance to dig up a wishing piece, which doesn't sound good, but in my extensive testing, I spent 3,000 watts and checked my bag once to see how many I got. He actually got at least 2 wishing pieces for every 3,000 watts I spent. That's a minimum of 100% more profit for the same amount of watts. If that's not more efficient, then I don't know what is. So long story short, we're going to need a metric ton of watts to get wishing pieces to make enough sweets to get every form of Alcremie. Since we need so many watts, and I value my time ever so slightly, I decided to use the date skip method to collect them. This didn't last long. In about an hour, I collected 100,000 watts. That's a lot admittedly, but again, while I was mindlessly time traveling, I did remember that the Digging Bros mum and dad were introduced in the DLC, and they'd be my key to picking up way more in a shorter time. The creatively named Diggin' Pa is a static NPC on the Isle of Armor will dig up watts, somehow, for the small price of 7 Armorite Ore. Okay, that's not cheap, but if I can collect them quick enough, this would be my ticket to having enough watts to take to his son to dig up all the wishing pieces I could ever need. And now you're probably wondering how I'm going to go about this. Well, for maybe 2 seconds I considered doing some max raid adventures, but like everything else so far, it just wasn't efficient enough. So, after the first, I kinda gave up on that idea. But I did get a shiny Sandaconda out of it, so that wasn't a complete waste of time.
Wait, no. Wait, yes!
Then, I realised the Digging Par has a wife who likes to travel all around the Isle of Armor. If you manage to find her, she'll give you the chance to pick up at least 2 Armorite Ore. I can't stress that this is a chance, because more times than I'd like, I'd end up hearing this sound on the first attempt, and I'd lose the ore she offered me. And then she'd run off of me to avoid the controller I was ready to launch in her direction. Even with the potential of this happening though, it was still worth doing, more so after I nailed down a route through the Isle, hitting every place she could possibly spawn. If anyone wants to attempt this, I'd recommend just stopping if she's successful in the first attempt, since it's a guaranteed 2 Armorite Ore if you do. After about half an hour of this method, I could collect 28 Armorite Ore, give or take depending on how good at a job she wanted to be. Then I could take all the ores she dug up to her husband, hand them over and hope he gave me enough watts back in return for the miles I'd put on my bike collecting them. Usually he'd only give me about 20 to 30,000 watts each time, but then there would be the times when he'd roll up his sleeves and really get into it. The best he ever did was 160,000 watts in one go. I think it might be fair of me to assume that he might be the breadwinner of the family. With all these watts collected, all I had to do was go back and visit his son, more than he probably ever does, and redeem all of them at once, which took a long time. Not even exaggerating for the video this time. Thank God I set up my turbo controller to spam the A button while I went and did literally anything else, occasionally checking in to see how far it had gotten, and squeeze in an hour of exercise apparently, which still didn't even get me halfway through all the watts I'd saved up. Thankfully, this is a video and not a live stream, so we can fast forward right to the end where we collected all the wishing pieces we'd need. Sort of. Nope, sorry, wrong video. Anywho, I've said watts and wishing pieces so much they don't even sound like real words anymore, so let's look at how I decided to get all the Misty Seeds. We're going on an expedition into the Slumbering World to pickpocket some Galarian Weezing. Now every wild Weezing has a 5% chance to hold a Misty Seed, which I can improve by walking around with a bug in my pocket that has a compound eyes ability. This ups the chance of finding a Misty Seed to 20%, and we can kill 2 mustache gas monsters with 1 stone by teaching our butterfly how to rob people. But like everything else I've tried so far, this took way too long. So I decided to root through my bag and try to work out which items I could mash together to somehow make my own seeds. After doing some quick maths, I'm not going to show you the footage so you can't prove me wrong, I worked out that if I shoved a Moonstone and 3 Dynamax candy down the throat of the Cram-O-Matic, it'd spit out a Misty Seed for me every time. That was a lot quicker than hoping to steal them from Wild Weezing, and I was pretty much done after about half an hour of feeding the bird thing. With all the materials collected, we can start funneling them into the bird's gullet and creating all the sweets I'll need to make my very own buffet of alchemy. At this point I decided to stream since I needed a distraction while I powered through the monotony of pressing the same buttons in the same order over and over again until I had 9 of each basic sweet. With the recipe I'm using for basic sweets, there's a 39% chance for strawberry sweets, 15% for love, berry and clover sweets, and 16% for flower sweets, because they had some leftover percentage to use apparently. Getting all 9 of these didn't actually take all that long, and before we knew it, we had extra sweets for the next step of the process, where we need to start making the 2 rarer sweets from the event I missed. The recipe we're going to be using for these is completely different, and by completely different, I mean we're literally just swapping the Misty Seed for any of the extra sweets I made. This is the point where I'd like to say we ended the stream and we collected all the sweets we need, bish bash bosh, and we're done. But no. I didn't have enough wishing pieces, so I had to get back on my bike and crack on with a lot more of the same thing I'd already done. Nothing particularly interesting happened for the most part, except for the digging part going harder than usual and digging up over 200,000 watts in one sitting. And by the end, we had almost 500,000 watts to redeem. And after another excruciatingly long visit to the digging bros that I'm not going to subject you to, I definitely had enough wishing pieces this time to finish off the rest of the challenge. The video is getting a little bit long at this point, so all you need to know is that I collected the last few rare sweets off stream and set myself up to jump on another stream to finally actually catch Pokemon in this Pokemon based challenge. I was basically on the home straight at this point, and I could see my goal and began catching all the Milcery that I'd need to evolve. And as you've probably already guessed from everything else in this video, it didn't last long with Milcery only being a 20% chance as a random encounter on Route 4. They do also have the chance to be marked if I do it this way, but it just wasn't worth it. Of the few that I caught though, 2 of them did end up having the uncommon mark, so I'd save them for some of the better forms as I finished out the challenge. In the end, I went back to my roots and what originally started me streaming in the first place, which was hatching eggs so I could complete my decks. Again, nothing interesting happened while I did this, but the conversation in the chat did devolve into something. That's a solid question. Is Alcremie actually, also another one, an ice cream? Or if you actually cut it up, would it be meat? Because I know there are inanimate objects. So it is fully in the realm of possibility that it could just be possessed ice cream, because that, when in doubt, if a Pokemon's an item, it's possessed. Do a tier list of Pokemon, like which one would be the best? I feel like I'd like Fido more than I'd like Dashbun. Just because I'm the type of person that likes a good undercooked cookie, so the closer it can get to cookie dough, the better. I feel like they've vet a couple, but Magikarp's the one everyone remembers just because they literally laid it out on a plate and showed that they ate it. But I feel like they've mentioned that they eat more Pokemon in the anime than just Magikarp. After whatever that was, I had all the Milcery and a few leftover eggs. So I decided to clean up my PC boxes by hatching the last of them. And thank God I did, because this happened. Like, that's how vivid that memory is. So every lamppost I go past, I'd be like, click it and hope for the best. And then just when the light would shine on the screen, I'd, wait. I'm past all the Milcery I needed. I've got 63. I'm just hatching the extras. I am glad I kept on with this. I just saw the black eyes and I knew straight away, what? Like I usually do, I was using the Masuda Ditto to breed for Milcery eggs, which helped my odds and meant that I had a shiny hatch for me, which I decided would be my trophy for completing the challenge. Between streams, I got an extra star sweet since I thought that it'd be the most appropriate topper for a shiny, and then I got some sleep. We're in the final phase of my plan now, and well, I was a bit paranoid. And I'll go over why in a second, because that paranoia would only be justified right off the bat, since at the start of the next stream, my mic was muted without me realising, and I didn't notice until chat pointed it out. You were kind of right. I just forgot to turn the mic on. With my mic now actually on, it was time to start whipping our Milceries into shape, or Alcremies I guess. Firstly, I needed to go into my boxes and apply the toppings to each Milcery. Then look down my list of how to get each form of Alcremie and realise how high the potential to mess each one up was. Like you can see here, this is where my paranoia came from. A lot of the forms have very similar requirements, and the lighting on the evolution screen didn't help. I was on edge the whole time, constantly thinking that I was gonna spin the wrong way, or for the wrong amount of time, or at the wrong time of day, or mess up some other special requirement that I didn't even know existed. And it didn't take long. Did I get it wrong? No, don't say I got it wrong. With my paranoia now even more justified, I was prepared to save before evolving each Milcery just in case I messed up again. That was before I had an idea though. Wait. The real low bar I was about to say, but I realised, can't I technically just do this if they're all going to be the same? Can I like mass whip my Alcremie into the right forms? If my theory is right, they should all just chain. Yeah. Is the other one going to go straight away? Yes! Oh, I can mass evolve them. Oh, that is sick. I love that. Now that I knew I could evolve a whole team at once, the chance to mess up was reduced purely due to the fact that I'd have to spin less overall. But I'd still find a way. Oh, for God's sake. It did, didn't it? Wait, is that the wrong gun? I feel like that's the wrong gun. Yeah, that's a Magic Cream. Thankfully, I got lucky since it was the only form I had an extra sweet for, so I didn't have to reset to an earlier save for this one. I would have to reset when it happened again, right at the finish line though. But thanks to being reminded in the chat to save, I didn't get sent too far back, and before we knew it, we were evolving the final set of Milcery and completing the challenge I'd set out to do. There was just one last thing to do though. Remember that shiny Milcery we caught earlier? Well, it still needed to be evolved so that we could keep it as a memento for completing the challenge. And thanks to something that came up earlier in a stream, the chat pretty much gave me the perfect idea for what I should nickname our new trophy. I might name it something along those lines, like I might just make it nice and sweet, it might just be called Ally. After a lot of planning and many changes to make the whole process more efficient, I can now add all 63 forms to my living dex, pushing it even closer to being a complete form dex. If you're curious, the total for my living dex has gone up from 1,219 to 1,282, leaving only 90 gender differences to collect before my living dex evolves into a complete form dex. That's something I'm probably going to do on a stream, so be sure to follow me over on Twitch to catch that live, as well as me hunting down some shinies for my improved living dex, and some other stuff as well. And if you can't catch the streams live, I re-upload them on my VOD channel so you won't miss out on any of it. But with all that done, feel free to do the usual, like, subscribe, whatever, and I'll catch you in a bit. Bye!